Hi again, everybody, and welcome to another Pip and Dodds Packers podcast featuring the man in the middle, the former Badger and Packer. He was a fine football player. He's a better human being, I got to tell you that, and he's an outstanding broadcaster, Gary Ellerson. 105.7 FM, The Fan, the big show, 2 to 6 in the weekday afternoons, and he's all over the place covering the Packers and his beloved Badgers as well. We're delighted to have him here. He's also Spectrum News 1, the football show with Leroy Butler and Dennis Krause. John Dodds is our Packers historian. We have a showdown here between the 49ers hosting at 9-1. They are hosting the 8-up, 2-down Packers, a surprise to many. Gary, you look at that game, flex to Sunday night. How do you feel about it?
Well, I'm excited about it. I think when you look at the Green Bay Packers, you're really trying to find a measuring stick game for them. Although the first game of the year in Chicago was kind of a measuring stick game. I mean, they've had a couple. The Minnesota game right after that was a measuring stick game. But I think a lot of people wondering, how are they 8-2? How are they able to do this with a new head coach, new system, Mike Pettine, defense coordinator, although he's been here for a couple of years, but you got a whole bunch of new players over on the defensive side of the football. What are the Packers all about? Well, they're all about, to me, I think Matt LaFleur. If you want who is the MVP of this team, I think it's Matt LaFleur, the head coach. He's been able to get these guys in the right situation and have Rodgers to buy into this new offense.
And they're a somewhat flawed team. We admit that. They're not the best Packers team. But many of those teams are. Now, when you look at the 49ers, they had some issues with the schedule early where people said it's kind of soft. But, man, that defense, and they bring it, and they will bring a pass rush. And Jimmy Garoppolo, they had the close loss to Seattle, and then he went and threw 4 touchdown passes through for over 400 yards, and they had to rally to beat the Cardinals. How do you look at this matchup, especially from the perspective of a pass rush with an outstanding defense coming after number 12?
Seems like every 5 years, the NFL, there's a team that comes out of nowhere. In the 90s, it was the Rams. And all of a sudden you look and you have Orlando Pace, who was a number 1 pick at left tackle. You have Torrey Holt in the slot, and he was a top 5 pick. When you have that many top 5 picks over time, you have to add good players. That's what Frisco, I think, has. They have 5 number 1 picks in their front 7. And 4 of them were drafted by San Francisco, and 1 was Dee Ford that they traded for, second-round pick to Kansas City. So the key to this game is their front 7 makes a lot of plays, and they abuse a lot of offensive lines. The Packers have a good, above-average, maybe even even better than that, offensive line. They have Balaga, they have Bakhtiari, they have Jenkins. Lindsley's good, and Turner's probably the weakest out of all of them, but he's solid. If you can stand up against that, give A-Rod some time, I think you can pick apart. Richard Sherman's good, but he's on the downside of his career. And their other cornerback, 41, I can't think of his name offhand, really improved. He's impressive, but I think you can push them a little bit. The key is that front 7, and when you're talking about the schedule is coming up. They're 9-1, San Francisco, but they have to play Seattle, Green Bay, New Orleans, and Baltimore. That's the toughest schedule in the NFL. They could end up maybe at 10-6, 11-5. So this would be huge for the Packers to get that bye.
Yeah, especially playing at Minnesota. I think that may be the tougher of the games to win, but we'll see. Both teams, Gary, as you're aware, very, very big on the turnovers, and I think +5 for this host team, the 49ers. So how big is it going to be for a defense, talking about Mike Pettine's Green Bay Packers, to get back to getting turnovers, which we saw against Carolina? They had been absent for a while.
Well, really, the 49ers don't turn the ball over a lot. I mean, Garoppolo seems like he has some tendencies where he will try to force it in there.
Especially if you pressure.
Right, if you pressure. But for the most part, they're 1-2 and the ball is gone. I mean, that's that Shanahan's offense. So they don't let him take a lot of chances of pushing the ball down the field. So it was really about Kittle's, and he's going to probably be out. But it was really about that tight end, short passing games. You look at what they're trying to do. They want to run the football. Yeah. The Green Bay Packers, I think, maybe about 26th or 27th in rushing defense. Not very good. So the San Francisco overall, you put their team together. So what do they really want to do? They really want to control the clock. I mean, they've got a good football team where they can run the football. They give you multiple sets. They give you 3 running backs. They're going to give you a couple tight ends. They want to throw it over the middle. Defensively, they want to rush it, put a lot of pressure on, and they want to shorten the game. So they want to limit Aaron Rodgers' possessions that he gets offensively, and they want to smother you, and that's what this team is all about. You're right about the first-round draft picks. When you can get 5 first-round draft picks on your team, and they hit, and that's what the 49ers did. This is probably the best defense that they're going to face. We thought it was the Chicago Bears, but the 49ers, I think, is the best collection of talent in the NFL defensively.
And John, the drama to me is, if you will, from the coaching sideline standpoint. On one end, you've got Kyle Shanahan, a mentor to Matt LaFleur, and some think Shanahan may be the best mind offensively in the game today.
Mm-hmm.
And you have LaFleur's brother Mike on his staff, and then you have his best friend as defensive coordinator. So there are no secrets. Interested in getting.
Well, there better be some secrets this year.
Or new wrinkles or something, right? Yeah.
Well, over a bye, that's the interesting thing. When you have a bye, you have 2 weeks to figure out your tendencies and go against them. What I was struck with last year, the 49ers played up in Green Bay, and it was they had one of the worst records in the NFL. And I think Green Bay won on a last-second field goal by Crosby. But what struck me how much faster the 49ers were at running back, tight end, wide receiver, the skilled positions. They went for speed. And I know when I was watching the Senior Bowl this year, this Deebo
for the fifth time,
and Deebo Samuel was a guy. I was thinking, this is the Randall Cobb, the newer version of Randall Cobb. He's out of South Carolina, and he was taken about 4 or 5 picks ahead of Jenkins, which, hey, Jenkins is legit. Mm-hmm. But this Samuel is big time. He's had 100 yards in each of the last 2 games as a rookie, and he's broken more tackles as a wide receiver than any NFL player. Mm-hmm. So this would be the perfect, I think the Packers are maybe a draft away. Gutekunst next year is going to go for skilled slot guys to replace Cobb, to maybe get a fast tight end if Sternberger doesn't work out. But that's the type of player that the Packers need to add. Samuel in the slot. That's the perfect guy to do that. But I thought the team speed just jumped out at me last year.
Right, and then that slot guy can be a return guy, because I think if you look at special teams right now, the Green Bay Packers special teams or return units, they're not getting anything out of those return units. It's almost back to when Butler them played when they had Mike Pryor. Mike Pryor just fair catch. I mean, we just want somebody not to turn the football over, and it's kind of feel like that's where the Packers are with their return unit. J.K. Scott, I thought, punted well for the first 5 or 6 games.
The
all of a sudden he got cold at Lambeau Field. This kid's from Alabama. Maybe he doesn't quite
Second
understand
year, he hasn't caught on yet.
No, so he's kind of trailed off a little bit. Mason Crosby's still been consistent. I mean, he's always going to be there for you. But I think at the end of the day, you're right. Maybe next year, we're talking next year already, but the Packers try to figure out how to get a return guy, because they're not explosive on their return units at all.
Gary, let me ask you about pre-snap penalties. 3rd and long, they'll have a first down, they'll lose 4 yards. That can't happen if they're going to win against the 49ers. What perhaps could they do with a bye week to try to eliminate, or at least cut down on those kinds of mistakes, which you're not going to be able to make and win a game such as this one?
Well, you got to be able to zone in on that. I think the pre-snap penalties hurt you, especially a team like San Francisco 49ers, right? You're 1st and 10, now you're 1st and 20 or 1st and 15. You can't have those things happen to you, because that now they know you got to throw the football. Bosa's, now those guys are ready to go. You just got to understand now, LaFleur used a lot of personnel packages. So sometimes guys are coming in and out of the huddle. You don't know who's really in. And I think he talked a little bit about that. And they're going to try to streamline a little bit their personnel package of guys coming in and out so they can all be on the same page.
JD, 35 points. That's what that Packers defense allowed in the first 3 games. We thought this was a defense that Aaron Rodgers was hugging Mike Pettin. And okay, Gary said it on our last podcast. They're good in the red zone. They don't necessarily allow a lot of points, but they have got to find a way to secure that football from the 49ers, to force turnovers to win. I don't think they can win without winning that battle.
No, they probably need 2 interceptions. Garoppolo gives you 2 to 3 times per game where he'll throw it up there. And Kevin King has dropped probably 4 interceptions. So has Jair Alexander.
Both have, yes.
But also, Kevin King has made maybe 2 or 3 unbelievable interceptions in the end zone this year, which is good. The interesting guy is Ibrahim number 30. I'm losing him. Abraham Campbell. I'm sorry, the guy that they brought on.
Yep.
They brought on the last year or last week. They brought him on last year. He blew his knee, and they kept him on. They used one of their injured reserve spots to pull it up, one of their tags that they could bring guys on. They brought Sternberger and him. They played him, I think it was 45 plays last week for the first time, and he had 6 tackles and a forced fumble. So they like him. I think he might be a key to watch, number 35, possibly trying to maybe shadow some of the speed running backs that they have and let's see what they do. I was watching the game film against Arizona and San Francisco, and Arizona put everybody up in the box to shut down their run. So San Francisco did the swing passes, as Gary was saying, with their speed outside and the seam passes. And they have 2 very good tight ends, and George Kittle from Iowa will be back, the Madison native who went to Iowa. He'll be back after sitting out about 3 weeks with knee and ankle injuries. He's a fast tight end. He's kind of a poor man's Gronkowski, or maybe a younger version of Gronkowski. But yeah, those are my keys. You have to have a turnover, 1 or 2 of them. Garoppolo is going to put it up. Jair Alexander has to be ready this time.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say, if they get their chances,
Right.
Will the Packers have to play their best football game? Matt LaFleur said, what can we do to get better? Well, we need to be more consistent. We haven't put it all. We had it in stretches, Gary, and you've been there and done that as a player, but all 3 units coming together as one. Would it be fair to say if you're going to win this game, you may have to play your best game of the season?
Well, especially on the road, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you look at the 49ers, they've had a tough stretch in the last 3 games. Listen, they go play Seattle, they lose Seattle at home, then they go to Arizona, which I thought they lose that game. Arizona, they were down 16-0. That was a very physical game. A lot of their guys are banged up. You talk about Emmanuel Sanders, they bring him over from Denver Broncos. He's got some sort of rib injury, so they're a little banged up coming down the stretch here. But so yes, the Green Bay Packers are going to have to play their best football, error-free. Defensively, they're just going to have to be honed in on what they're trying to do. They may have to go 8 guys in the box because the San Francisco is going to run the football. They're going to go with a short passing game, slants, underneath patterns, crossing patterns. If Kittle's playing, they got to be able to get the tight end. And they don't really force the football that much down the field, but I think if you put 8 guys in the box, I think Shanahan's going to realize that and that they're going to try to go over the top. So they've just got to all be on the same page. And listen, no repeat of what happened last time they went to California, right? And I understand now he's changed the plans on we're not going to go Friday.
That's right.
Now we're going to go Saturday like we've been doing. And sometimes when you go to L.A. and if you've never been to L.A. before, they got a lot of trinkets out there that you see
Some
shining.
temptations.
You might want
Lose
to down
focus.
there. Right.
And yet, John, this is such a huge game. I would like to think that they would be amped and ready. And we've talked about this before, both of you, that the bye week certainly came at a good time that way.
It did. The last time was the nightmare of the San Diego trip, or the Los Angeles trip to play the Chargers. But the time before that, they went out to Los Angeles to the Coliseum to play the Rams. And they put an extra player in the box, and they stuffed Gurley for about 3 quarters. And they put Kevin King came back. That's the game that really told me the value of Kevin King, because the Rams had been scoring 50 points a game for most of the season, and they had King guarding one, and then they put Jair Alexander guarding the slot. Crooks, he guarded him, and he had 5 passes defensed, which was a terrific. So the Packers have it in them and I believe that was after a bye also. And plus, you had Clay Matthews playing in California, and he was all world and those guys. But now you have Rodgers coming back to San Francisco, his home, or close to his home. And I look for a pretty good effort where they're going to come to play and they're going to make sure. I think the young team learned something the last time. But they also had that Kansas City game the week before where I think they were dead tired. They could have used an extra day rest.
Right.
So there was a combination of things why they were no-show against the Chargers.
I'd like to think that the difference is going to be Aaron Rodgers. He's going to find a way to beat this team, let's say 28-24. I saw those numbers somewhere. I can live with those. How about you, Gary?
That's exactly my score. I mean, I think, Pip, when you look at the game, I think they're going to score some points. I think the Packers are going to win it 28-24. I think it's going to be exciting, hard-fought game. I think the Packers just got to stay healthy. And I think, if you look at overall, John, you talked about it a lot, that the Packers are the healthiest team in the NFL. And so they just got to continue to be healthy, not getting big guys hurt. The offensive line, right, Bulaga, Bakhtiari, those guys got to make sure that they're handling the pass rush and they're communicating and they're passing guys off. And I think otherwise, I think they should come out with a victory.
In 2014, they lost Raji and Barkley in camp, and no one after that the rest of the year. This is very much like that. They've lost Lane Taylor. You can live with that. Raven Green, you can still live with that. They even lost Devontae Adams for 4 or 5 games. They could live with that. But they're the healthiest they are. They're coming off a bye. I think the Packers win 31-30. Hanging on at the end like they always do, getting ahead, hanging on at the end.
Is it a Mason Crosby walk-off maybe?
Yeah. Wouldn't that be nice, huh? Shades of the Cowboys in 2016.
Right.
Yeah, it'll be a great game. I think they'll be focused, but it's the Packer offensive line against the number 1 picks of the 49er defensive line.
Will they run the ball, Gary? Will the Pack be able to run it? We know they're going to use their wonderful tandem of Williams and Aaron Jones to catch passes. Will they be able to run it? And hopefully clock-consuming drives will be the result.
They're going to have to, but I just feel like the best player on the field is probably still 12. Yeah. And maybe at the end of the day, it may be on 12's shoulder to get it done. And I'm okay with that. But I think you come out, you do try to establish the run game. But when you got the equalizer as Aaron Rodgers on your team, I think most certainly you just got to unleash him and let him throw it around a little bit and extend some plays and be Rodgers. Chico is right up the road where he's from, and he feels that juice coming along down his spine, and he wants to do a little something. So I think it's going to be about him at the end of the day.
Yeah. Okay, well, and the one thing we know is if they win this game, it is huge from the standpoint of seeding.
Sure,
Who'd have thunking at the beginning of the season? 8 wins, 9 wins, a rookie coach. They're 8-2, but the Niners, a formidable foe. The Packers historian is John Dodds. The former Badger and Packer is Gary Ellerson. The Pip and Dodds podcast featuring Gary. We're so thankful to have him. And our sponsor, Professional Construction, Inc. Mike and Michelle Grau, a family within the business, and they are fantastic in the community. Again, as I've been saying, we look forward to sharing their mission with you, getting out, doing a remote show. We're going to have a lot of fun as they are big in the community and give back. And we thank you for giving back by hanging around with us. And thank you to our great partners, Jason and Derek and company here at Wisconsin Sports Stream. They are a gift. See you next time.